What does that sound, you ask?
From the number one station, you come.
Welcome to the Rec Show podcast, a show dedicated to beatmakers around the world. Kick back, relax with the host Gldnmnd.
Welcome back to the Rec Show podcast, a podcast for beatmakers by Beatmaker. Hey yo, right now you're listening to that, that Nod Your Head's new album called POV. I need y'all to go check that out, support that on bandcamp.com, man. Shout out to you, Nod Your Head. Yo, we are back for another episode, number 62. This time we're going back to Florida. We already made interviewed one guest, L3 Miss from Clearwater, Florida. Now we're going to Orlando, Florida to kick it with a New Jersey born native and now a Orlando, Florida resident, a barber, music producer. You can't box him in. He goes by the name of Bundo. Y'all go ahead and welcome Bundo to the Rec Show podcast, man. We're going to interview him, man. We're going to hear his music. We're just going to enjoy the vibe, enjoy the conversation, man. Y'all go ahead and subscribe and support the show. Links at the bottom of the description of the show. And man, we're going to be back, man. So enjoy it, man. Put this on while you're biking, riding, driving, flying. Share this on your social medias, man. Enjoy this, man. We'll be back. Peace and love, yo. Yeah.
Hey, yo. Yo, this your boy Bundo, and you're now plugged into the Rec Show podcast with Gldnmnd.
and pepper have done so tremendously well in the herb and spice arena. They are favourites, my Odysseus. They just wait on the taking. Arrogantly assuming whatever you want to prepare, you're going to need us. Even myself, who might be a friend to death. Isn't that right, Maxwell Sutter? But there are other herbs and spices. Oregano, thyme, rosemary, cumin, paprika. They're all lined up in the cupboard in the kitchen at home waiting. Sometimes the cupboard door opens, they see salt and pepper on the table. Look at them, the bastards. What have they got that we don't have? I just don't get it.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is episode number 62 of the Rec Show podcast. I go by the name of Gldnmnd, and we are going to get straight into the interview with Orlando-based music producer, beatmaker, Bundo, man. So, let's get into it, man. Yeah, what's going on, Bundo, man? Welcome to the show, man. So, every time I do an interview, man, the first thing I like to ask every beatmaker is, go ahead, introduce yourself for the internets. Introduce yourself and where you're from, what your name means, how your name was created, and how long you've been making beats, and, any associated collectives that you may be a part of as well.
So, my name is Bundo. I'm from New Jersey, currently residing in Orlando, Florida. My name, what it means, Bundo is actually short for vagabundo, which in Spanish would be vagabundo, which translates to a vagabond or like a vagrant. The story behind that is, so when I first started making music, I was going by the name Scissorhands because I'm a barber by day. It's been my profession for the last 20 plus years. And I kind of wanted something that reflected both my professions or both of my, hobbies, talents, whatever. So I came up with Scissorhands, like Edward Scissorhands, because I figured, chopping hair, chopping samples, whatever. I don't know. At the time, I thought that was clever, I guess. So I just did a little bit of a variation on the spelling. And it turns out that once I started putting stuff up on SoundCloud, and back then we had, what was that? There was a site that used Reverb Nation. Right, so it was Reverb Nation, MySpace at the time, MySpace Music. SoundCloud had just dropped, YouTube. And, I opened up a Facebook and a Twitter and all that stuff. That's when Facebook just came around. It was still a baby. But long story short, I got a cease and desist notice from a DJ Scissorhands. So he had found me on Twitter and sent me a cease and desist to my email from his agent, and was telling me basically, he had a copyright on the name, the spelling, and a few variations of it. And it happens, just so happened that the spelling I was using was one of the ones he had, trademark or copyright, whatever, over. So I had to look for a new producer name. So at the time, I was playing a lot of Xbox on my free time, and my Xbox Live gamer tag, I had picked like a random one, and somehow I landed on James Vagabond, which I guess was supposed to be like a riff or a spin-off of James Bond, but like James Vagabond. So anyway, I started telling my artists that I was working with at the time, that's gonna be my new producer name. I'm just gonna go with that. I couldn't think of anything else. It took me forever to even come up with the Scissorhands thing, and I was just like, you know what? All right, just gonna go with that. I don't even have to think about it. Whatever. And so we're recording one day, and we went to go get some food, take a little break from the studio and all that, and we went to Quiznos, and on the way out of the restaurant, on the way back to the car, I noticed there was a sign there next to where we parked, and on it said something to the effect of "No se permite vagabundo," which in English would translate to like no loitering or no homeless people. It really just translates to no homeless people allowed, like no vagrants allowed. And I said, oh look, that word right there, vagabundo, that's basically vagabond in Spanish. I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna switch up my producer name from James Vagabond to Jaime Vagabundo. Like I said it trolling, and when we got back to the studio and continued working on these two guys' projects for the next couple months, I kept on with the joke about using that name. And over time, they just like nobody's trying to say that whole name, like you know. So they just chopped it down to Bundo, and it just stuck. And I went on to work with other people after that, and yeah, they just were already calling me Bundo, and yeah, I can't. My own family calls me Bundo now. My own sister and parents, like it's just stuck around for a while. And to answer the second part of that question, I've been making beats since like 2007, and currently no associated collectives. The most recent musical collective that I was, I guess you could say, associated with was the Chill Tapes label. I released a few singles and an album under them. They were doing the whole Free Rice compilation records. They had a few volumes of the lo-fi, like All-Stars type deal, and then they had a lo-fi house All-Stars compilation, and I was also featured on that. But yeah, currently, no, just riding solo, doing it, you know, going for dolo. Yeah.
My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks.
In a row?
That shit is hilarious, man. I had to add that in there, man. Yeah, this shit is hilarious. But yo, all right, man, dope. Yo, life experience gives you the best names, man. You just never know where you're going to come up with ideas and stuff, man. But yo, man, so how did you begin your journey into beat making and sampling and composing? You know what I mean? Are you trained on any instruments and formally, or you just make music by ear?
So my beat making journey began in 2007. I was renting an apartment in Camden, New Jersey, right on the waterfront. I had a few friends that used to attend the Art Institute of Philadelphia for different things. One was a videographer, one was like a fashion guy, and one was a producer. These guys all lived in the dorm together. Anyhow, they would come over to my apartment, you know, whenever I had time off of work, on weekends mostly and stuff like that. We had a dope little rooftop deck, and you know, we'd go up there, have drinks, whatever, a couple L's go around, and then they would come downstairs back into my apartment, and they would always freestyle. They had like this little, the three of them that lived together, they had this little crew called the Wave Crew. It was like WAV dot, like the wave file. And they were kind of on this like cool kids, Das Racist kind of vibe, like kind of like lazy slacker rap, but I don't know, still kind of funky, and there was some depth to it, you know what I mean? But it was more like, I don't know, it was just vibey. Anyway, they were really good. I always found them very entertaining, and I thought they were skilled. And their little tape that they put out, I thought was dope. So the kid that was going to school with them, that was making the beats, he left back to Trenton, New Jersey, where he was from, because they stopped offering that course at the Art Institute in Philly. So they no longer had a guy to make beats and record them anymore, but they wanted to still push forward and continue with, their little Wave Crew thing. So it just so happened at the time I was I was leaving a Best Buy one time. I was in there shopping, and back then they used to like the section of Best Buy where you wait to check out, like the line area, they used to just like fill it with racks and bins full of just stuff they really just want to get rid of for the low. And in one of those bins I saw that they had like a Beatmaker, like not a game, but a Beatmaker software, but in game form for the PS2. So it looked like a PlayStation 2 game, but it wasn't a game at all. It was actually a music making software, and it was called Magic's Music Maker. And it turns out that Magic's Music Maker is an actual real DAW. Like, it's been out for years, and this was just essentially a ported version of that software. So I don't know, it was like $2, and I was like, whatever. It said, oh, you know, learn to make beats. You can make beats in seconds using this, blah blah blah. That's what it said on the packaging. So I'm like, all right, whatever, $2. Like, I'll buy anything for $2. I don't care, right? So I take it home, and I think it sat on my coffee table for like weeks before I finally cracked it open. And once I did, I was like, you know, I picked it up fairly quickly, and I was like, oh, this is not bad. This is pretty nice. It's easy, and it's got a ton of sounds. And at first, I think I was messing with like loops. There was a ton of loops in there, and I just started layering the shit out of loops. And then I'm like, oh, I can chop these up. I can, you know, reverse them. I can rearrange them and pitch them and do all these cool things to them. So I'm like, all right, you know, this is cool. And I couldn't put that fucking thing down. Like, I just spent hours and hours making beats on there. And the next time my friends came over, you know, the usual business, we go up to the rooftop, have a couple brews, a couple L's, come downstairs, they start freestyling, and they're like, put on YouTube, you know, so we can listen to some beats or whatever. And I'm like, actually, check this out. I got these beats that I made on this PlayStation game. And they're like, what? So they sit around the couch, you know, around the living room, and I play the beats for them, and they're like, yo, these are actually really good. They start rapping over them, and I'm like, I'm hyped, because I'm like, you know, I've never made beats before in my life, and these cats are actually liking it, and it sounds good with them rapping over it. So they're like, yo, cool. How do we get these beats off of there? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was no way to get them off of there. Like, I couldn't run audio out of the PlayStation. I mean, at the time, I didn't know any better. I probably could have eventually finessed it. Like, I think today, with what I know, I may have been able to finesse it, but not then. I had no idea how to get these beats off of this PlayStation 2. So they kept telling me, listen, man, you need to get a PC. You got to invest in a PC. You got to get this thing called Fruity Loops. And I'm like, okay. So I was talking about this at the barbershop one day, and the kid that used to sweep for us was there, and I guess he overheard me mentioning it, you know, telling this story to a client. And he comes in a couple days later, and he's like, yo, I need a cut, but I don't have no money. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, but I got a PC. And I'm like, you got a PC? He's like, yeah, I got a PC, and I installed Fruity Loops on it for you. And it's nothing crazy. I just, you know, he was kind of like, you know, I don't want to say computer nerd, but he was savvy with that type of stuff. And he said he had a few components laying around. So he basically just built me a bare bones PC. And he's like, yeah, it's just got nothing on it but Fruity Loops and an operating system. And I installed a few sounds on it for you. But yeah, it's just good enough to run Fruity Loops, and you should be good to go with that. All you need is, you know, a keyboard and a mouse, and you're ready to go. So I'm like, all right, cool. So he gives me that. I take it home, I set it up, I get some little shitty speakers from like Radio Shack or whatever. And it didn't take me long before I started making beats on Fruity Loops. It took me like a few hours to really like understand that template. I mean, it's really user friendly, it's super easy. And I think like within the first couple days, I had already had like full songs. You know what I mean? Like, just, yeah, I don't know. I just went in, and that was history. After that, I spent the next couple months just like learning that software. And I was like, okay, I feel like I outgrew it really quickly, because I learned it so quickly, and I like learned every feature and all the good parts of it, the shitty ones, you know, like I learned it all so fast. I was like, all right, I need to move on to something else. And that's when I went into, that's when I got into Reason. I bought myself a Mac and got into Reason. And what am I trained on currently? What instruments? I am not trained on any instruments. I play keys by ear. I used to play drums and percussion when I was younger. When I was in like middle school, I played in the school bands. Yeah, just like a percussionist and drummer. But I'm not really trained on any instruments that I wouldn't say like formally trained. Yeah. But, you know, I prefer drum machines over analog drums anyway, so.
Yeah, man, I can definitely hear the drummer in you when I'm listening to your, like, discography on Bandcamp or Spotify. Yeah, man, like, yo, you got a way with drums, and I'm like, damn, like, how do you even do that with these drums? Like, the way that you, like, you layer, like, your instruments and stuff like that too, man, is bananas. But yo, man, so okay, yo, starting out from way back up to where you are right now, like let's talk about family members. Like, how did which family members or friends expose you to this incredible world of music and different genres and stuff like that? And discuss any genres that that you were exposed to as well, man.
As far as family members who exposed me to music, my dad was a drummer, so I guess the rhythm is just in our blood. He, like I said in the last question, I played drums and percussion as a youngin. That probably came from the fact that he was also a drummer. And he would, my dad was a big musical person. He still is. I don't think there's a day that goes by that my dad doesn't wake up and go straight to listening to music. He played a lot of classic rock when I was growing up. A lot of, in the band that he played in, they played a lot of covers, but they played a lot of 70s funk, a lot of disco era. They played a lot of 60s classic rock. But yeah, and then my sister, well, both of my older sisters kind of put me on to music as well. My sister that I lived with, she's like 9 or 10 years older than I, and she was kind of like my musical mentor. Like, she would be into stuff when it was out and when it was trending, and kind of like pass that down to me, just being around. She was my babysitter, and I was just always around her, so I'd hear what her and her friends are listening to, and they're teenagers and I'm a kid, in grade school, and they're watching MTV and MTV Raps and all this stuff in front of me, and I'm just absorbing it all, just loving it, And I think that had a big part of why I got into hip hop and why I have such a deep passion for that. Also house music. My sister was big on house, living up in the Northeast, Jersey, Philly, New York areas. That was pretty big up there in the 80s and 90s. And yeah, it was at the time I didn't really realize how important it was going to be to me later in life. But I feel like now when I hear some of this stuff, I'm like, damn, if it wasn't for my older sisters playing that shit around me, I would have no respect for it, I guess. I wouldn't have the nostalgia that I have for it now. And in I think it's been a year now. Yeah, last year I put out a house album myself. First time I ever put out a house record. And I feel like it was so easy to make. I never dabbled in house or dance or any type of music like that. House, techno, jungle, trance. No, I'd never dabbled in none of that. I've listened to it before, but never dabbled in it. And when I went to make this little EP, it just came out naturally. I don't know. I think I was just in my head mimicking what I grew up listening to. And yeah, it was super fun to make, and it was super easy, I feel like. I don't know. And I think just stepping away from hip hop for a second also felt good, you know, just to do something different. But yeah, check that out if you can. That's on all streaming. It's on my Bandcamp. It's called Flora. I think, like I said, I think I put that out a year ago. But yeah, check that one out.
So for anybody that's listening, man, that has kids, you know, nephews, nieces, like you riding around with them, yo, they listening to the music, man. They are definitely listening to the music that you are playing, and you're exposing them to it. They're gonna remember and use this later on in life, man. So, you know what I mean? Make it a good variety of good music, all right? Yeah, you just never know, man, all right? But yeah, yo, so, okay. What's one moment that sparked your interest into creating your own beats? I know you mentioned it before, but, you know, like, what's that one moment that sparked your interest in creating your own beats? And then what's the one moment that you knew it was time to let the internet hear your beats?
I would have to go back to that moment in my apartment in 2007 when my homies were like, you gotta get this Fruity Loops thing and start making beats on there so we can rap over them and whatnot. And I ended up moving away shortly after all of that happened, and I did end up getting a computer and working with Fruity Loops and all that stuff. But I think they just kind of went their own ways. Everybody, like, after they were done school, they kind of all went their own separate ways, and they never pushed forward with their little crew. But that wasn't gonna stop me. I was like, all right, y'all created a monster now. So like, I slowly started building a studio in my home. Like, I had moved out of that apartment that I was living in Camden, and I was renting a house somewhere else nearby, and my dining room was empty. So I was like, I'm not gonna use that as my studio. Was literally on a dining room table for the longest, like, until I got myself a proper desk. But I started building my little studio in my dining room, and you could not take me away from that computer. Like, I would go home on lunch break. I owned my own little barbershop, like maybe a mile away from that house. And I'd literally go home to use the bathroom, and I'd just start making a beat. I'd turn on my computer, start making a beat, and so I was just going in. Like, I'm pumping out several beats a night. I'm like really, really studying like all my favorite beat makers and watching YouTube like crazy. I'm reading Scratch Magazine, taking tips and hints and little cheat codes from Primo and all these other guys that would be in that magazine. Anybody at the barbershop who did music and of any kind, I was just asking them tons of questions, and I was just really, really into it. I was super focused on this new craft that I was learning. And yeah, when I thought it was time to hit the internet was not long after I started making these beats, man. Like, even those first like couple dozen beats I made on Fruity Loops, I was like, yo, I'm printing these, I'm putting them on MySpace. So like almost right away, I'd say within 3 months of me making beats, I already had 10 tracks up on the internet. MySpace Music allowed you to have 10 songs on your homepage that would be like a playlist, and it would just autoplay and like a little widget as soon as anybody got onto your page, which was fantastic. That was like the best social media page I've ever used. Facebook at the time also had the same feature where they had like a little widget built in, but it didn't. I don't think you could have 10 beats. But anyway, almost immediately, right away, I put my stuff up on Reverb Nation and DatPiff. I was throwing up like beats on datpiff.com. There still might be some stuff lingering on there, I don't know, but yeah, it didn't take long after I started before I was like, all right, I'm ready to show the internet my stuff. Granted, back then the internet was nowhere near as popping as it is now. I mean, like, back then you still had a good chance of getting someone's attention. Right now, it's almost impossible. It's just oversaturated, and there's just too many people online now. Back then, there was still a level playing field where it's like, all right, you could still be kind of a nobody from Jersey and land placement with somebody. It was nowhere near as oversaturated as it is now.
Yeah, man. Yo, small world, too, because I was born and raised in Camden, New Jersey, so I know what you mean. Waterfront area, man. Like, yo, I lived on 3rd Street, man. That big ass building, that white building that's on the corner. Yeah, man. Yo, we're like literally right down the street from Camden County Jail, man. But yeah. Anyway, all right, yeah, that's dope. Yo, anybody that's been around long enough, you know about MySpace, you know about putting your music up and stuff like that. But I feel like today now, quality is better than quantity. But you can never have too much music out there for the people to tap into. Especially more and more people every day are coming online. So, stack the odds in your favor. You feel me? Hey, yo, so now we're gonna get into some goody. Yo, can you name one beat as the greatest beat of all time? And do you know the beat maker or the music producer that flipped that beat into something like dumb stupid,
Man, this question is crazy because I'm one of those indecisive people that I can never choose a favorite of anything or a top 5 of anything. Like, I could give you 5 of my favorite things, but I could never put them in a prioritized order. So for me to name one beat as my greatest beat of all time, man, that is so hard to do. But if I could, I'll say this: the one beat that made me lose my marbles, and I was like, I need to make beats like this. I want to make beats better. I want to level up. Everything that I have done and taught myself over the past couple months means nothing. I need to do beats like this. Was Massage Situation by Flying Lotus. I remember I used to watch Adult Swim like crazy back then, and there used to be a bump, and all it was a picture of a bathroom door, and nothing more. It was just a picture of a bathroom door that said Adult Swim in the corner, and it had Massage Situation, probably about 10 to 12 seconds of it playing. And I remember rewind, because I would use my DVR to record everything back then. I remember rewinding that bump over and over and over and over. And at the time, Shazam had just come out, so it barely recognized anything. It wasn't picking it up. So over time, I did a little research and finally found out that it was Flying Lotus. And I'm like, man, who the hell is this guy, At the time, I had just discovered Doom. I had just discovered, like, Dilla. Kind of late, but, I was just getting into Dilla. Madlib. Basically the Stones Throw, like, crew that was popping at the time. And I'm like, who the hell is this Flying Lotus guy? And what the hell is Brain Feeder? And then I go on YouTube and I find just a treasure trove of stuff that he has up. And I'm like, whoa. It just blew my mind. Like, that was like the perfect thing to stumble upon when I was just starting my beat making journey. And if you go back and listen to a lot of my older stuff, like, I gotta also say I'm very impressed that you did this much research on me and my past, because not a lot of people know about some of the projects that you mentioned to me when you asked me to do this interview. I was like, wow, he knows about that? That's crazy. Like, you really had to do some digging into my past to find some of the stuff that you name dropped. But if you go back and listen to some of that stuff, some of the stuff on Condiment Whore, some of the stuff on Bad Seeds, even maybe some of the stuff on West Earl Drive, those older records, you'll hear a heavy Flylo influence in my music. You'll hear it today. If you listen to Manum Kalum, Atabe, you will 100% still hear that classic Flylo sound influenced in there. There's just, I'm one of those, I'm not gonna, try and act like it's a unique thing for beat makers to take from all their favorites and just make a medley of all of those little things, those little characteristics. I'm sure most of us do that, but I for sure always keep a little bit of Flylo vibe in my shit. Like, so the long-winded answer to that is, if I had to pick one beat that just set my whole damn world on fire, it was Massage Situation, man, by Flylo. Just something about that side chain, that everything ducking, but like the samples and everything else ducking behind the kick so heavily, so aggressively. It just gave it that pumping, that pulsing feeling that I hadn't heard in a lot of music yet. And I don't know, man. That just changed my goddamn life.
Yeah, so I noticed you mentioned, Dilla, Madlib, Brain Feeder, Stone's Throw. So let's get into it, man. Like, can you recommend some like must see, read, or listen to content for my listeners? While they're trying to figure out their sound and create their own beats and their own way in music. And it can be a movie, a documentary, a book, a YouTube tutorial, or a podcast such as this. Because you already mentioned Flylo, man, so shout out to Flylo. I don't know if he listens to podcasts, but if he does, while you're in the midst of creating, something to throw on the Retro Podcast. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a few YouTubers. I'm not going to name drop anybody, but there's a few very popular YouTubers that have excellent tutorials on basically every piece of gear out there. You'll know who I'm talking about, because they're always going to be the top 5 hits. No matter what piece you're looking up, you're always going to get like the same 5 producers that are on YouTube that are very big, the guys I'm talking about. And whatever tutorial they have, it's up there and it's got millions of hits for a reason. So use those. Those are very inspiring. Whatever piece of gear you get, go on there and watch how they use it. They're going to be honest with you. they're basically being thrown these things for free. So it's not like they have some crazy loyalty to the brand or whatever. Some of them, yeah, they have their favorites, and I'm sure that there's some bias there. I'm not saying there's none at all, but those guys are very well versed at what they do, and it's a great tool. I 100% recommend watching the 808 documentary. I don't know exactly. Oh, actually, it's called 808. It's about the Roland TR-808, and that documentary is incredible. There's so much depth to it. There's so much information in there. It is going to blow your mind. As a producer who, you know, I have actually worked, I interned at a studio after college, and they had a functioning TR-808 still in there, and I got to actually like tinker around with a real one, and it's just crazy to think that that is considered to be like the last instrument invented. When you think about all the instruments in the world out there, you know, think about all the stuff that was in, like, you know, all these crazy pieces like Mozart and all the stuff that came out of that whole Baroque era and all of that. Think about all the instruments created over the years, and for the TR-808 to be kind of considered the last instrument created, I guess the only instrument you can really say was created after that changed, you know, the world was the DAW, the digital audio workstation. Because other than that, what other instruments have been invented that like now are a staple? The 808 has so much history, and it literally changed music forever. It like created so many genres. People don't realize that it not only changed hip hop early on during the very creation of it, but it created so many subgenres, so many other genres. House, you know, all electronic genres come out of that 808 era. Literal house music was built because of that machine. Like, anyway, I don't want to get too crazy with that, you know. Just watch that documentary 808. Books, stuff like that. Let me see. Honestly, I would have to say grab, or you may be able to grab them on eBay, but if you can read online, Scratch Magazine, for any beatmaker out there who's using, it doesn't matter if you're using hardware or software, if you're chopping samples, if you're, you know, programming drums, if you're playing out, you know, synths and making melodies and creating textures and using percussions, there's so much cool shit in those magazines. And the coolest part of it is how they break apart everybody's process. They talk to all these legendary producers. I mean, Dre, Primo, Ninth Wonder, you can go on and on. Yay, everybody, until they stopped making that damn magazine, which was probably like 2010 or something like that. But that's a great resource. Also, man, I know if you haven't already, you have to watch Rhythm Roulette on YouTube. Like, it's just stupid inspiring. It's super cool to see everybody's process and how they flip samples and whatnot. I would highly recommend that if you haven't stumbled upon that. And yeah, just, if you know any beatmaker that has a Twitch channel, like I stream myself as well. And that's how I was able to come up with so much material for the next couple albums. Watch your favorite producers that have a Twitch channel, watch their streams. Not to, necessarily take everything you need from it, but even just to chill with them and just vibe and, you know what I mean? See their process, see their creative process, and just to see how their brain works when they're creating. It's enjoyable. There's something inspiring and something kind of relaxing about that. Like I keep streams on all the time in the background. When I'm at home, I'll turn on my monitor and my speakers and I'll just, let people's streams just run in the background as I'm cleaning up or doing whatever. And I don't know, man, it's just a different, like, it's a different kind of inspiration, you know? But I can't tell you how many times I've put on like Knowledge's stream or Stolen Drum stream or, you know, whoever. And I'm like, man, I need to turn on my MPC right now. And I'll mute the stream and just get right to cooking a beat right on the spot. Like, it happens all the time. I'm also one of those people that keeps like a machine around me at all times, you know, like, because you never know when inspiration, even if you're just carrying around a pocket operator, even if you just have the Koala app on your phone, like, I don't know, you just give yourself the ability to always be able to cook at any moment, you know?
Yeah, man. Yo, that Koala thing, that pocket operator, that Koala sampler, great idea for beat makers that, you know, you never know when inspiration is going to strike. So I definitely understand what you're saying, Bundo. And yo, I watch Stolen Drums Twitch streams all the time on YouTube, and there's a lot of people. Jay Field, I watch all the time. Telly McLean, I watch all the time. Like, it's a lot of different people, man. So yeah, I'm gonna leave everything that you recommended for this in the description of the show below. All right, so y'all check it out. Click on whatever that's you want to watch, and it'll take you directly to what Bundo is recommending. All right, so don't even trip. All right, but yo, man, so like from your social media and your streams, you know, you use a Native Instruments machine, a Akai MPC, a SP404 to create your music. But why these pieces of music or these DAWs? And does any specific piece have their place when you're creating music?
So yeah, currently my setup consists of the hardware. I am using the MPC-1, and I have the Roland SP404A and the SP404 MK2. As far as DAWs softwares are concerned, yeah, like you mentioned, I use Native Instruments Machina, and I slave that through Logic X. I have basically been just using hardware for like the last year. It's a new realm for me. I've always been in the box. I've always been a software producer for the last since 07. I'd never made beats on hardware until like 2019, something like that. I just was comfortable. I was happy with my softwares and my MIDI controllers and, you know, trigger pads and all that type of stuff. But as I started to get into the live setting, I started to realize more and more how it's almost necessary to have some hardware pieces, especially if you're going to be playing like beat sets and stuff like that. If you're going to play live beat sets, it just saves you a lot of hassle to just like carry a little SP in your bag, you know what I mean? Or, you know, whatever. Carrying a laptop with MIDI cords and power cables and, you know, a controller, and it's just, it's cumbersome. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. You can do a lot of cool stuff, and to a lot of people, they don't mind. They don't mind bringing that setup along, you know, and that's fine. But as I started to perform more and more, I noticed literally everybody's just coming through with an aux cord and an adapter to go to their iPhone and an SP404. And I eventually just adapted, and I bought the 404A maybe a few months after I got on the live scene circuit, and essentially just use it. You know, I was just using it for live effects and stuff like that. I didn't actually start making beats on an SP404 until I got the MK2, which is an incredible machine. I mean, they completely outdid themselves. with all the features they packed into it, and it just keeps getting better with every software update. It's really, really user-friendly, very intuitive, it's sturdy, the construction and the build of it is excellent in comparison to older models. There's a lot of purists out there that hate it, and they say the OG will always be the GOAT. You know, I'm not gonna argue with them, like, you know, to each their own. I'm kind of new in the hardware realm. Love these machines, but I gotta say that my baby is definitely the MPC. There's just, to me, the workflow on the MPC, it's just too easy. Like, I have ideas down instantly, and I love that. And I can take it anywhere. You know, you can take the MPC live anywhere. It's got a rechargeable battery. You could literally take it out to a park bench with some earbuds, and you're making music in seconds, you know, out in nature. You know, that's amazing. It's just a powerful tool, and I'm just really digging that right now. My whole album, the last one that I released, is completely comprised of just ideas and tracks that I made on the MPC over a year's time. The first year of me owning it, I just loaded it up, and yeah, it was like, all right, it's time to put these out and you know, make some use out of them. But I will say that yes, software is always also going to be necessary. You're going to need software at the end of the day, because where are you going to mix your tracks? Where are you going to master? You're going to need it, because no matter what, even if you're making everything on hardware, yeah, you can take it to an engineer or a mastering studio that is only going to use hardware components, but 9 times out of 10, your shit's going to go through the box, you know? It's going to go through a software at some point. So I think that there is a place for all of them at once. You know, I haven't made beats on software in over a year now, but I still need the softwares, I need the plugins, I need all of that stuff, so that way when I'm done making my stuff on the hardware, I can run it through the software and give it that final touch, that polish at the end, you know. So, and then, you know, once in a while, like I do use software for certain types of things depending on the genre, right? Like when I made the house album, I did that strictly in software. I didn't use hardware for that. Like maybe certain components here and there, but I did all of that in the box because software just has better synths. They just have better, you know, automation, you know, capabilities, way more parameters. The cool thing about, you know, the software is that you just unlimited power. Versus hardware, you have many limitations. But yes, limitations do force creativity, but it is nice to have those other parameters and those other components at your disposal, and especially an unlimited amount of them, you know? So they all serve their purpose. They all have a place. I still use them all depending on what I'm trying to do, you know?
Yeah, I agree, man. Everything serves their place. Master as many as you can, so you're not just boxing the one, right? So, okay, I know you love movies. You know, you're a big movie buff. You can tell by just listening to your music. You know, what movies put you in the mood to create beats? You know, what's some movies people should check out?
Movies, oh yeah, for sure. I'm a huge movie buff. I watch movies constantly, man. I'm every day at least a movie before bed. And you know, I think it translates into my music. I cut a lot of samples, and I sample, you know, clips and whatever excerpts from movies constantly. Like if you've heard any of my music, you're at least gonna hear, you know, at least a half dozen to a dozen movie clip samples, you know, even if it's a 5-song EP. I just feel like yeah, I don't know. And I also get very inspired from watching movies. When I see certain films, and I watch a lot of horror, a lot of comedy, a lot of drama. I really love slice of life movies, which is like, it's it's just those films where they're just like kind of just watching somebody live a normal life and go through like normal mundane things, but then, you know, obviously for, you know, the sake of entertainment, they're gonna put some things in there that are bizarre or, you know, pique the interest of the viewer. I draw a lot of inspiration from films, man, like whether it be the soundtrack or the score or just the whole vibe of the movie. Like, I don't know, sometimes I walk away from watching a film and I'm like, man, I want to make music right now. Or I'll hear something in it and I'm like, let me run it back on my phone and I'm gonna take a little sample from this, or I'm gonna, you know, I don't know, just, I don't know, I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, music and visuals. So yeah, I don't really have any recommendations though, to be honest with you. I mean, my taste is all over the place. So, I mean, if you want a good recommendation, go on my Instagram and look at all the weird crap that I've got on there, and you may recognize some of it, you may not, but I don't know. DM me if you want a good list of movies to watch, I guess.
Yeah, man, y'all heard him. Yeah, I mean, hit him up if you don't recognize a movie, man. But movies, hey, a great inspiration for.
What the hell is even that?
For me, man. Damn, I love the intro to that song too. Yo, but okay, so, all right, what's your favorite decade to sample from, bro?
It has to be the 60s. Any genre. They were just going fucking crazy in the 60s with experimentation. Music has become lazy today, you know, because you can snap your fingers and have music, you know, made. For fuck's sake, you can even just type in to an AI bot now, I want a lo-fi hip-hop song, and it will spit out a lo-fi hip-hop song in seconds. That's not... There's no effort, there's no creativity, there's no work put into that. The 60s, they were losing their minds. They were experimenting with a lot of drugs too, but we wouldn't have crazy shit like the flanger effect or any of the stuff that we got going on right now if it wasn't for people probably getting too high and fucking plugging shit in wrong and incorrectly and suddenly discovering a new sound. And just, I don't know, man. I feel like people were just really pushing the limits with music and sound design back then. You know, even in films, like go back to A Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick. Listen to that score and tell me that there's anything else ever made since then that sounds anywhere close to it. You just can't find anything like it. Go to that movie Suspiria by who was that? Dario Argento. The soundtrack for that shit. There's nothing like it. Nothing. It's just so bizarre and just, I don't know, man. They're just, I don't know. They broke the ceilings when in the 60s, and you know, I just feel like from day one when I started making beats and loop digging and tube digging and all that, I started in that genre and that in that era, in that decade, and I still do. When I go dig, that's the first place I look. I go to stuff in the 60s, man, 60s and 70s. There's just so much of it. You know, all these years digging and I still find gems. Every time I go looking, I find something else that I've never heard before. So, yeah, I'd have to say 60s, followed by the 70s.
The 60s, yeah, man. Yeah, that's a different one. Because some people, you know, most people say the 70s was doing their thing, but the 60s, I'm going to have to tap into the 60s, man. All right, good recommendation on that one. All right, so, you know, which element did you begin your journey with, you know, when it comes to the 4 pillars of hip-hop, which are like DJing, MCing, breaking, graphing? You know?
My older sisters and my older cousins, they were my musical influences. They were my fashion influences. And, you know, growing up with MTV, BET, you know, the jukebox, the box, all of that stuff on television, you know, I was exposed to it. And then growing up in Jersey, you know, Philly area, the Northeast, whatever. It was that's where it was born. You know, hip hop was born then, there, and I was growing up in the golden era of it. You know, I was growing up in the 80s and 90s when that shit was just, they were breaking new ground. You know, and yeah, I loved it all, man. I had uncles and that DJ'd, and just watching them mix vinyl to me was just mind blowing. Breaking and graffiti, oh man, like, to me that was just super cool to see. You know, it was different. It was its own unique thing that, you know, they didn't really care who you were. If you could do any of these things, you were cool. You know what I mean? You were down. They were cool with you. Like, whatever. You could be any color, any, you know, from any walk of life, any background, any culture. If you could, you know, scratch and cut, mix two songs together in a dope way, you know, you were accepted. MCing, same thing. Didn't matter. I mean, Beastie Boys, white boys back in the day, killing it. Like, did it their own way. Very unique. And became legends. Like, you can't be a true hip hop fan if you don't appreciate Beastie Boys. I mean, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, M did it, you know, for the white, you know, culture. Wait, no. What do you mean? Beastie Boys been doing it since the 80s. Like, they had 808s on their records before anybody else. Okay, look that shit up. Watch that documentary. God damn it. Breakdancing, you know, watching my older cousins do it and stuff like that. They would bust out the cardboard at parties, basement parties, which was a thing back in the day. Man, that was dope. Like, I don't know. I was exposed to all of it, and I loved it, you know. As soon as I was old enough to have my sister's hand-me-down boombox and some of her cassette tapes, you best believe I was in my room every night after school listening to music, man. I feel like I was very fortunate to grow up in that time, in that era, and be exposed to all that stuff when there was still some purity to you know, hip hop back then. Now everything it's just automated bullshit, you know. It's not what it used to be. You gotta really dig to find something unique and different and refreshing anymore. Back then, everywhere you turn, there was something new and refreshing and different. So yeah, very, very fortunate, very grateful to have grown up in that time.
Yeah, man, my 80s baby. So I seen the hip hop come on board, but then I also saw, you know, what they were doing with R&B and jazz and you know, just all the different types of music, man. It was incredible, man. So incredible time to be alive. Still is, but you know. All right, so give it some thought. Can you name your adolescent and adult beatmaker superheroes? I know one of them is Flylo. All right, Flying Lotus. And just give, you know, like, tell us why they were so important at these times in your life.
Yeah, beatmaker superheroes. Okay, man, so many. Pete Rock, huge, man. Like, listening to Pete Rock and CL Smooth, those beats were just crazy. The Beatnuts, their beats were made in house by one of the guys who was in the Beatnuts. His name was Juju. He was a fucking savage, man. Who was that guy from Soul Assassins? He used to do all the Cypress Hill beats. DJ Muggs was fucking crazy. The RZA, obviously, huge influence to me. I honestly like Wu-Tang. I'm a huge fucking Wu-Tang nerd. Like, I treated the whole Wu-Tang thing like a cult. Like, it was a cult I was part of. I bought into their lore, and like, I was fully invested in that shit. Wu-Tang tattoos and all. Like, always been a huge fan. And the RZA, just to me, I just have always been fascinated by his brain, the way he did things. He was so unorthodox and so random, and like I just feel like he was also another one that, like, he was a genius, and somehow he figured out how to translate that genius to his fingertips and create, you know, just timeless classics. Primo is, you know, probably the god, you know, if we're gonna talk about beats, like, he still uses that just golden formula from day one, and has always had such a distinct sound, and his process is so fascinating, the way that he chops and the way that he cuts, and yeah, man, the way he compresses and mixes, like, his whole process is just fascinating from start to finish. Havoc from Mobb Deep. I'll never forget the day that my sister's boyfriend was like, yo, I'm gonna give you this tape, and I'm telling you right now, this tape is gonna change your life. I remember at the time, I had just bought the Roots' second album. It was called Do You Want More? And it was the all blue cover, and it just had like, it had Black Thought, Questlove, and I think Malik B on the cover. And I was riding around on my bike, had that on my Walkman and my headphones, like, nonstop. And I played it for him one time. We were riding in my sister's car. He's like, oh yeah, you know, I fuck with the Roots, I like them, whatever. But he was like, you know, in his mind, he's already like, I'm gonna drop a bomb on this kid. So yeah, the next time that we hung out, or that I saw him, it's like maybe a day or two later, he came over, and before he went home for the night, he handed me that Mobb Deep Infamous tape and was like, this is some old other shit right here. This is gonna change your life. And he was not wrong. That album was just, I played it nonstop until, like, I don't know, probably until the tape just got all like warbly and thin, because I just kept rewinding it and flipping it, finding certain parts where I just wanted to hear this part of this beat so many times. And I don't know why, when I was a kid, when I bought a cassette or a CD, I was the first thing I would do before even listening to the album was to check the credits and see who made the beats, who wrote the songs, and what samples were used. I don't know why that was always a thing for me, but I would not start listening to an album until I saw the credits. And I just always had this little fascination by it, you know. And I remember thinking, like, hey, I think my dad has that record in his collection. I'd run to my dad's crates and try to look and find, like, see if, you know, I'm like, oh shit, here's the Aretha Franklin record. This is where the RZA got that, you know, that little sample from, or whatever. But yeah, it's just, I was just always fascinated. Havoc just had an interesting way of sampling. His drum programming was very, very simple, but it was effective. But yeah, a lot of that Queensbridge rap was big, you know, to me. And let's see, who else was, let's not forget Dre. I'm not gonna, you know, I know that might sound really generic, but Dre, he's, you know, he deserves the title of GOAT. You know, he's definitely GOATed, because the sampling and the techniques that he was using on albums like The Chronic and Doggy Style were amazing. They were amazing. They were so clean, so well done. His chops, his loops, everything he cut, all his layering was incredible, man. Like, definitely, you know, it was awesome to hear that, you know, so early on. And look what he went on to become, you know. Who else? I guess I would have to mention Rick Rubin, because I was definitely a huge fan of, you know, everybody he produced. You know, Beastie Boys, LL, Run DMC, all them people back in the day. Large Professor was making beats for Nas at the time when he came out with Illmatic. But let's just get right to the superheroes part, the super duper heroes part, or the super villain part. Because I gotta say, my favorite beatmaker of all time is definitely Doom. You know, his technique, his whole aesthetic is just crazy. Like, I don't know, man. Just the stuff that he did was just, I don't know. It was just amazing. And not to discredit anybody he's worked with, Madlib, you know, I feel like he brought some of the best out of Madlib. He brought some of the best out of Danger Mouse because they wanted to mimic him. They wanted to mimic what they thought Doom would want to rap over. So, you know, it's almost like he kind of helped create those just by existing, you know, and having his unique style. And then Flylo, man. Flylo, Dilla, you know, Wonder. All these guys are all superheroes to me, man. There's so many producers out there that I could sit here and rattle off their names, but, you know, I love them all, you know. But those are some of my, like, real